Ladies and gentlemen, this being the time and place to call to order the regular board meeting of the Vallecitos Water District. First thing we'll do is going to do the Pledge of Allegiance, and we're going to ask our retiree to come up and lead us in it. Thank you.
Ready? Begin.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Larry. Diane, roll call, please.
Director Evans?
Here.
Director Fernandez?
Here.
Director Como?
Here.
Director Sinella?
Here.
Director Martin?
Here.
Thank
Okay,
you.
I'd like a motion, and slow down before you do it, to adopt the agenda for the regular meeting of June 18th with the caveat, under action items, I'd like to move item 2.5, because we have a speaker on it, and she's made the time to come here, and she needs to get to other meetings, to move that up to the top of the action items.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you very much. Okay, we are going to trail, or we have.
Nope, we got them.
We're not gonna trail. California Friendly Landscape Contest winners are here.
Lisa, if you'd come forward, please.
Mr. President and members of the board, it is my pleasure to introduce this year's landscape contest winners. Approximately 50 to 80% of the water usage in the Vallecitos Water District is dedicated to outdoor use. But as these participants showed, it does not have to be that high. Their yards were a beautiful example of a water-wise landscape that was not only water saving, but absolutely beautiful. We have some pictures to show you today. We have a third place winner, Joanne Bright. She's not able to make it today, but we'll show you some of her pictures here. Is it working? I clicked it, but it's not.
Nice tune.
Who are we thinking of right now? Yeah.
That's a good thing,
Yeah.
Dick Ferguson.
I was honestly to name that too.
All right. Joanne said she changed her landscape because she was tired of constantly.
Oh, my.
Oh.
That's really bad.
That's right, two of you at once.
That's Ferguson right there.
Her yard required too much water, and she now has a beautiful cottage garden. It's a cottage feel with year-round interests, lots of flowers. I went out and saw this garden, and there was birds and butterflies everywhere. It's just very beautiful. So congratulations to Joanne Wright. We'd now like to invite our second place winner, Dana McCoy. Okay, come on up. Lead our board chair, Mrs. Tom Martin.
Congratulations. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
That's beautiful.
Yes. After struggling for 20 years to maintain her landscape made of weeds and yellow overgrown areas, she decided to replace the grass with California natives, cactus, and succulents. They only water when it's very dry, and they rarely use the drip system. Her garden attracts birds, wildlife, and some insects. She used several books such as Landscaping, and wanted to have plants in the garden she would enjoy being around. Dana averages about 5 units of water a month, and our average is about 14 months?
15, yeah.
15 units of water per month, so that's a third of what the average home in this area uses, so that's awesome. She is being awarded a $100 gift card to Boynton Creek Garden.
Thank you very much.
This is a California native plant book from Greg Rubin. Hopefully you don't already have that. Okay. Signed by our board of directors.
Oh. Because these things will change.
Short term.
Just a matter of time.
Yeah. And we have a little goodie bag for you with some conservation items. Okay, great. So any final words you would like to say?
Well, I have a question. Just
turf lawn in front of there. I'm wondering how I, as a citizen of San Marcos, can go to the city, now that I have my bona fides. And encourage them to replace that turf lawn and that monument sign, which is the entrance to our city, with more drought tolerant and maybe more appropriate landscaping. How do I present myself in that way? Do I go to the board and,
I will give you two suggestions. The one you can call the city manager, Jack.
right?
Dial the city member, ask the city manager.
Okay,
And or show up at one of their meetings, which are, I believe, the first and third Tuesdays of every month. And just under oral communication, bring this up to them.
okay.
I
Just
will
make an
ensure
agenda.
that our mayor, Jim Logan, would love to hear from you about that. He's very much in the water. He would love to hear about that. So they would appreciate it, and now that you're, but I'll put you steps out of it. Either call Kathy, she'll help you.
Yeah.
She'll help you, Kathy, call.
Oh, okay. I might do both, but I just might, I'm the water police in my neighborhood, and boy, that shocked me to see that twice. And I did call, and Public Works did respond to me a while later, saying they were going out there and checking on that horrible, horrible situation.
And I will tell you, the city will say that it's well water. That doesn't matter.
I'm sure.
Water's water.
Exactly.
And you,
Not need to be
but be prepared for it. Thank you.
Yeah,
Thank
absolutely.
you
That's
very
fine.
much.
Well, thank you.
Congratulations.
First place, I'm
Sure.
trying for next year, first place.
All right.
All right, this time I would like to invite our first place winner, Sharon Hansen, to come on up. In 2011, Sharon removed all of her grass in her front and backyard. The yard was boring, unattractive, and wasteful. These must be your words, right? Boring, unattractive, and wasteful.
Yes, exactly.
Her goal was not only to save water on a huge thirsty lawn, but to have a colorful, attractive yard that would be friendly to the environment. A drip system was laid out to reach each plant with a bubbler. Two colors of decomposed granite were chosen to add even more interest. Her landscape now requires minimal maintenance and water and provides for maximum color and appeal. She has averaged about 6 units of water each month. And you already got a $250 gift card. And we have a garden. Buy more plants for your garden. So congratulations.
And making sure mine's off.
Thank you. That competition, if you get number one 2 years in a row. Oh, wow. Stand back and do it. 2 years in a row.
I'll let her do
Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. Now, why don't you stay down there? The next one is Larry.
Okay.
Recognize him for his years of service.
Oh, okay. The next one is if I have Larry come on up.
Larry.
Ready to retire. Hard to believe. Turn around and face
Your peers. I'll give you
The firing squad.
just a little history on Larry. Believe it or not, he came here in 1968.
Oh, my.
Excuse me, 1980, 1990. Over the board for the last couple of years, whenever they hear of a new employee, about 99% have come from another agency. And actually, back in 1990, I actually hired Larry, and he came from about north of us. I just forgot the name.
Rainbow?
No. Where'd you come from, Larry? Rancho Water. Rancho Water. So we got him from Rancho Water. He came in as an engineering tech. In 2007, he was promoted to Engineering Tech 3, and he'll be here until July 4th when he's retired. So Larry's become kind of the expert in the department and a go-to for everything from the annexations to LAFCO, finding paperwork that nobody else can find, and procedures that nobody else knows. So for the past few months, what we've been doing is basically locking Larry into a cubicle and picking his brain. His wife, Anna Maria, is here with us. If you want to say hi to her. And one thing I will really miss is the lumpia whenever Larry brings those in. They show up at the back door, they don't even make it to the kitchen, and they're eaten while they're.
Thank you so much.
And so with that, 23 years with the district.
Wow.
No, thanks.
you guys showed up here, you know, everybody. And I'm glad to be part of this district. It's a great organization.
Thank you, Larry. A token of our appreciation for you to put on your mantle at home, for you anyway. Yes, you want to, but you shouldn't.
I don't know if I'm using it right.
Just push the button. Just push.
You should have stuck in her purse, I thought you brought it, I took pictures of it.
Thanks, Larry. Thanks, Al.
Oh, he's gonna go, he's already gone.
See you later, Cheryl.
Larry, before you leave. Larry, before you leave.
Hold on.
And Anne Maria, I just hope you'll show up at the Christmas party and we'll get to see how you're enjoying your retirement.
Oh,
Nice
is
to
this our
see you.
Christmas party?
You only paid dues for half the year though, so you're gonna have to pay the difference.
Is that okay? Can I pop in? Is that do I need to pay for them?
Thank you.
Thank you, Larry.
All right, moving right along. City of San Marcos Certificate of Appreciation.
Yes, it's not a presentation on behalf of the city, but last week Alicia did go over to the city. They asked her to come over to recognize her for her support during the fires. I think you did hear, we were contacted, we sent Alicia over to help them as a PIO. And so the city did send us a plaque over, signed by the city council to the Vallecitos Water District with presenting you with an honorable certificate of appreciation for your community support and contributions during the 2014 San Marcos wildfires. All the citizens invited in commending the Vallecitos Water District for their service. So it's just a nice plaque on behalf of the city.
Thank you, Alicia. Okay. Oral communication? Do we have any oral communications? Seeing none. Notice to the public. Okay, we're gonna move to the consent calendar, item 1.1. I need a motion for the approval of minutes, warrant list, financials, resolution establishing appropriate limits for fiscal year 2014, and approve the Vallecitos Water District 2013 Consumer Confidence Report. We're gonna do that in one motion.
Yes.
Move to approve.
We have a motion to approve.
Second.
We have a second. Roll call, please.
Director Evans?
Yes.
Director Hernandez?
Yes.
Director Paul?
Yes.
Director Snow?
Yes.
Director Martin?
Yes.
Great, thank you.
Moving on to action items, I'm going to ask, as I requested earlier, that we move 2.5, which we have, up to the beginning of the action items, because Joe McKenzie is here, who is a former president of the CSDA, and we put her to speak on this topic. Thank you very much, Joe.
Thank you, Mr. President, board members, for moving this up. I appreciate it. But since he just gave me a board packet, I'm going to feel obligated at least to stay for a while. I'm here to speak on item 2.5, which is the Special District Association's election for seat C. And that in your packet there, I think there are 5 people who are running. Myself and the other Region 6 Representative Bill Nelson and I are supporting Arlene Schaefer. She's a past president, and as I said in my email, which I think has been distributed to all of you, she has the qualities of a board member that we are going to be needing in the next several years because of our regionalization and our change in counties in which we have in the district. And I don't know, are y'all all familiar with the changes that were made by, let me give this to you, and you can pass it down. Because Region 6 picked up LA County and San Bernardino County. So geographically, we have one of the largest areas other than the North, Region 1, because we have fewer districts. The middle of the state has all the little tiny irrigation districts, and therefore their area is smaller. But when we did this regionalization, we tried to balance out the number of special districts. So what we have done with the board members, instead of just showing up for the board meeting, we are actually going out as board members to the districts and hopefully trying to answer any questions and giving them information on what CSDA is presently doing. And I found that Arlene is a hard worker, and the one thing that she does is she does follow through on her commitments. So I am asking for your board's support and vote for Arlene. And the other thing, since I have another 2 minutes, is that CSDA has their annual conference, and it's going to be September 29th through the 2nd of October. Room rates are $134, but those rooms are going fast. So if you are interested in going, please get in as soon as possible. And also, you've got the early bird special that expires middle of August. I think it's the 22nd of August. But at our meeting last week, we got a purview of all of the breakout sessions, and we've got some really pretty good breakout sessions and then keynote speakers. So I encourage as many of you as the budget will allow to go to this. And it's 2 hours into Palm Springs. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Joe.
Question.
Go ahead.
Joe, so what's your position now? You used to be our, like, state representative or president or something?
No, I'm still a state representative.
Okay.
I am seat B. So I'll be back next year because my seat will be up for a reelection.
Okay.
So I'm doing this on her behalf, but I'll be back here on my behalf, next year, because there's three representatives per region. There's 6 region, 18-member board, and those 3 seats alternate, 1, 2, 3. So every year, one of the seats is up for, election.
Okay.
That's how it works.
Great.
Thank you.
Any other questions?
Any other questions from the board? I have a couple if nobody else does. Go right ahead. Director Evan.
And can you explain why it was, the redistricting was done? How did we pick up LA and San Bernardino, and why? Oh, bad question.
Well, I was on the regionalization task force, and
You only have 2 minutes.
I says, oh, that's the time. I thought I had 4 minutes and 18 seconds. Okay. No. What staff was looking at, what we did in our strategic plan 2 years ago, was to look at being able to service the districts, not only those who are members, but to go out to those districts who are not members and let them know what the benefits are of being a member. And so our strategic plan indicated that we were going to actually hire staff, maybe similar to Aqua, but the staff would be centered in that particular region. So this is kind of a transition period before we get those 6 staffers. And some regions like this one, it's going to need 2 people if they're going to do what they want to do. But we didn't want to go out and hire 6 people and not have felt our way into this waiting pool. So we do have 1 staffer that's her job, is to go out to the various districts and just talk to them and tell them what is going on, and just take 2 to 5 minutes, basically like I do when I come here to give you information as to what's going on. And then what they did was, okay, we know how many districts there are, and instead of doing it according to members, they did it according to the overall number, where we only had 90, maybe 100 or less districts. There were some that had 200, 300. Now with this new realignment, we have about 180 districts who are members within this region. So it's kind of our strategic plan, and we're feeling it out. We're not jumping in. It's about a 7-year plan with the direction that, hey, if this doesn't work, staff doesn't have to feel married to it, that we'll pull back and regroup. But we're hoping basically to create more of a line of communications. And I don't have all of your emails, only a couple of you, in my database, because I will send out additional information that comes to me, to the San Diego County contingency or members, so.
Thank you.
Thank you, Joe. I hope you know I was joking about the time. I got a
About the
look
what?
From Jim, I got a look from Jim when I brought up the time. I'm just kidding. You have plenty of time.
Well, it says I got 4 minutes and 20
Yeah,
seconds.
Yeah, whatever you need.
My time is increasing.
Keeps going up.
Yeah.
It keeps
It's
increasing.
going the wrong way in your clock. Been so long, I've forgotten what the question was.
Any other questions?
Nope, I guess I don't have one after all.
You sure?
Yeah, we're fine.
Okay. Don't forget the conference. Sign up for it.
Oh, thank you very much. That's what I wanted to say, yes. Diane, I was gonna ask you, how many of us have signed up for the conference already?
I'm sorry, I didn't bring my travel.
3 of you have, according to the yellow paper.
It is because it's on there.
Okay. And one of them, I think, is Mr. Sinella, because when Mr. Sinella goes, he'll be completing what we need to move the step above transparency to crystal clear.
District of distinction.
Oh, yes.
You'll be one of about 5 in San Diego County.
Fantastic. So yes, we're very much looking forward to it.
Good. I'll pay attention. I'll even come back and make the presentation.
All right, thank you. The last time. Thank you. Okay, with that, if there's no other questions, looking for a nomination.
I would nominate Arlene Schaefer.
Okay, need a second?
I'll second.
Roll call vote? Or, I'm sorry, are
Need some
there any other
discussion.
nominations?
Yes.
Yes?
Yeah, well, Joe, I appreciate everything you do, and of course, your presentation for the other member, but Elaine Sullivan is current, well, as you can read her credentials, she's been around a long time. She's a fellow board member at EWA, she's a water board member at Leucadia Water District, and she is the current member, so I would have to recommend her just because of the way she represents us locally.
Okay, so there's a second nomination. Do I have a second? No? Am I doing this correctly? I think so.
Yeah, you're fine.
Okay, no second, so that dies. So I make so we move on the first nomination. But
I wanted to ask some questions about, well, can I do that?
go right
With a
ahead.
second or without a second?
You can do it anytime you want.
You don't need a second
Go
to
right
ask that
ahead, it's fine
question?
by me.
It would be more appropriate to have a second than have discussion.
Oh, and then have a second, okay. Then I would second it for the sake of discussion.
Okay, questions?
Okay. And then my question to you, Jim, is, are you familiar enough with Elaine? Has she dealt with this expanded region? Because that's quite a change to take on Los Angeles and San Bernardino as a new change. So I know she's represented here. I've met Arlene Schaefer just briefly at a couple of conference things, but I can see where I can appreciate that she's familiar with that side of the region. And this would be, I mean, I've always sort of felt like as we've gone into this, where the Southern California is slightly different than LA and San Bernardino. I'm just, Elaine's familiar with dealing with the whole region that way.
Well, I haven't had that conversation with her, but I do know that she's very committed to whatever she does, so I know that she's been attending all the meetings, and she pushes it quite a bit as far as CASA goes. But I really haven't had that conversation, so I couldn't tell you that. But I know she's a very committed person and passionate for those. Jim's on the EWA board, and she's a factor.
Any other questions? Any other questions? No? Then I say we take the first nomination. which was Arlene as our first nomination. Roll call vote, please.
Director Evans?
Yes?
Director Hernandez?
Yes.
Director Cordova?
No.
Director Spinella?
Yes.
Director Martin?
Yes. Thank you very much.
Be so recorded. Thank you.
Okay, moving on.
Thank you, Joe.
2.1, approve recommended Vallecitos Water District budget for FY 2014-15.
Where's John? If you'd please address the board.
President Martin, members of the board. The staff report that you have before you is in relation to the recommended budget that was distributed last Friday. The budget totals $132,977,000 and has $47 million of operating expenses and $86 million of capital expenses. The only change from the budget that we had at the workshop on June 10th to the budget we received last Friday is the addition of a capital project that was rebudgeted. It was in there, but it was taken out. We thought we'd have it completed, and then it is rebudgeted now, and that's $375,000. And the only other item that we had was during our June 10th budget workshop it was brought up about the consulting services for the branding and whether or not there was adequate funding included in that budget. And what we had looked at was an amount to get it rolling and then possibly come back if more was required, or we can at this time include an additional amount for that, and that additional amount would be about $100,000, which would pretty much cover anything from start to finish. So staff recommends approval of the budget for fiscal year 14-15, along with the amended $100,000 added for the consulting services. And I'll entertain any questions.
A quick statement, just so everyone knows that we have had, I believe, 3 meetings on this, 1 regular meeting and 2 special meetings, 2 workshops on the budget, where we didn't really hear from members of the board. We certainly had a lot of questions, which you answered thoroughly. So I appreciate that, but the board may have more questions now, and that'd be great. Director Sinella.
Thanks, John. You said that you initially had put in the budget enough to get the ball rolling. How far is the ball going to roll if we don't add the $100,000?
Actually, if you don't mind, I'll address that, Director Snell. When you made the point that the budget was the same as it was previous years, when we say get the ball rolling, we meet from a timing standpoint. We don't fund and pay for everything as we go through the year. So we would have used some of the existing funds that were there to keep it moving and just delayed other things. We could have paid for all of it out of it and had to modify the budget for something else. But that was our approach. We didn't really know what the cost was to be, because I think the estimate was anywhere from 50 to 100,000. So if it was 50 and we had to use 25 or 30 of what was already there, we would have come back. It was apparent that there was a little concern that there wasn't a specific line item. So really what we did is we just added a $100,000 line item to the outreach budget specifically.
Okay. No, and I'm more comfortable with having it actually as a line item, so thank you.
That's what I got.
But that extra $100,000 that wasn't previously in the budgets that we looked at in the last 3 meetings, are you taking that from a different allocation somewhere else? Are you taking it from reserves? Are you increasing rates to get that? How are you getting that?
It would just come out of reserves.
Okay, just out of reserves. Okay. That's all the questions I have.
Move to approve. Oh, sorry.
Nope, you said it. That's what I was gonna do.
Okay. Move to approve.
One second.
The budget is recommended.
And I have but one question, and my question is, are we changing the chart to show that
Yes.
Tom is number 2?
He is now the landscaper.
You moved him down.
Yeah, we moved him down the chart a little bit.
Thank you
Yes, we'll
very
take care of
much.
that in the final.
Thank you. Roll call vote, please.
Director Evans?
Yes.
Director Hernandez?
Yes.
Director Cordova?
Yes.
Director Spinella?
Yes.
Director Martin?
Yes.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Moving on to 2.2. Yeah, Resolution of the Board of Directors of the Vallecitos Water District electing to have sewer service fees for Improvement District A in fiscal year July 1st through June 30th, 2015, collected on the tax roll. And I understand this is a matter of function that we do every year.
Yes, just for the sake of some of the new board members, we have a couple of areas within our district. We call them Improvement District A. Improvement District A is predominantly an area where the Vista Irrigation District provides potable water service to the residents, but Vallecitos provides the wastewater services. We have an area that is served by VID, and then off of Barham, all the mobile home parks just to the south of Barham, right where Woodland Parkway comes under the freeway, all along there, those are actually served by Rincon. So they're old outstanding areas where they're physically within our boundaries, within our water district, within our sewer district. Water is just provided by another agency. So a method of collecting the sewer is different than collecting for a water meter. If there's non-payment or lack of payment or issues with water, you have the ability to turn off and terminate service. On the wastewater side, it's pretty hard to turn off a sewer lateral. And the only way to go through that is actually condemnation of the home, which doesn't go over well. Since I've actually been here 30 years now, we've been doing this, and I think longer. What we do is we submit a tax roll prepared by staff to the tax collector. They collect the sewer fees on the tax roll, and then twice a year we receive lump sum payments from them. We are obligated to have a hearing to notify the public of this, which we go through every year. So the action you would be taking today, what I would request that the board's approval of the attached resolution, this will be a roll call vote, setting a public hearing for July 16th, 2014.
Okay, Director, questions? Director Hernandez.
And why don't we do this for all these sewer fees throughout the district, put them on the tax roll?
It's a cash flow. We'd have all of our cash coming in just on April and December. So, you know, it's great, you know, that they do the service for us, but we're concerned with cash flow and keeping it on a monthly basis as much as possible.
The other thing I would caution on that is one of these things, whenever the public sees this funny charge on their tax bill, they look at it as a way of kind of hiding fees and charges, so.
Well, that was my idea. The
So
famous Parker method.
So I would recommend we stick with the way we're doing it.
Any other questions?
I move we adopt the resolution.
Second?
Motion and a second. Any other questions? I have one. Does the county charge us anything to provide this service, and if so, how much?
It's very minimal. It's like $200, or it's very small amount.
It's the labor cost to actually put it on the tax roll.
Yeah.
That's it.
Very
$200
reasonable.
total.
Couple
Yeah,
$100.
for the year.
For the year.
Really?
Yeah.
And they send us a check. But what if they were unable to collect?
We actually get activity reports every year about every month. There's 13 of them actually, apportionment schedules, and they actually let us know what's rolled over into delinquent and what hasn't. So yeah, there's a percentage of them that are still delinquent, but it's their service that they provide to collect.
Yeah, then they collect on our behalf through foreclosure.
Okay. Thank you very much. We have a motion and a second. If I have a roll call vote, please.
This will be resolution 1452. Director Evans?
Yes.
Director Hernandez?
Yes.
Director Polo?
Yes.
Director Spinella?
Yes.
Director Martin?
Yes. Moving right along to 2.3.
I
Where it is, staff.
believe Rob will address this to the board.
Rob, you look very nice to me. Thank you very much.
Well, thank you very much, Mr. President. Yeah. Thank you, Mr. Lamb. President Martin, directors of the board, have before you here an adoption of a resolution ordering the annexation of a property here known as the New Point Investment Group LLC annexation. This property is off Maryland Lane. As you might have recalled here back on March 19th, the board was presented with 3 different annexation requests for 3 different properties. Last meeting here on June 4th, the Cortez and Development Solutions properties there, resolutions were adopted by the board for those. So this is the 3rd resolution that was considered there at the March 19th meeting. So back on March 19th, the board conditionally approved the annexation of the New Point Investment Group property, which is approximately 5.59 acres, with the addition of a 0.39 acre piece of property adjacent to its western boundary. The owner has met the conditions of approval. They paid their annexation fees. They paid their State Board of Equalization fees, and they have submitted proof of ownership and a property description to the district. So therefore, staff recommends adoption of a resolution ordering the annexation of the New Point Investment Group LLC property. And I'd love to answer any questions you might have.
Any questions from the board? No. Seeing none, ask for a motion.
Move to approve.
Second. Aye.
Second.
Second. Roll call, please.
This will be resolution 1453. Director Adams?
Yes.
Director Hernandez?
Yes.
Director Paul?
Yes.
Director Sinell?
Yes.
Director Martin?
Yes.
Thank you, Rob.
Thank you very much. 2.4, ordinance number 177, wastewater density impact fee. I asked for this to come on the agenda. I had some questions about it, of which I've had many of them answered already. I actually received today from Dennis, I think we all did, a copy of the resolution, right word? Agreement. Settlement.
Settlement
That was
agreement.
made by the two parties. I had some questions about what those terms were, and I have since seen them. So I kind of understand now. I was under the misguidance that there was a different amount of units, which after reading it, I saw was the right one, and as to where they were allocated and how long they could be used for. The only thing that I'd like to ask that's in there that I still want to make sure, we're still on time to do our next impact study and to do our next GMO plan, and we're still on the timeline stipulated in there to do all that.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
So by 2016,
Yeah, the key drivers on this are every 5
I didn't
years.
bring that with me, so I apologize.
Yeah, every 5 years, we adopt a urban water management plan. And so we have to adopt our 2015 urban water management plan by March of 2000, okay, they're nodding their heads, March 2016. And we do that concurrent with the Water Authority Master Plan and then Sand Egg in the county. So that's kind of our driving force. So I sent you guys out the preliminary schedule a while back on when we have our different workshops and what we thought. So the target is to adopt it sometime between January and March of 2016, at which point we will then move into the next phase of the whole process, which is development of capacity fees. Because all the master plan does is say, this is what you need, this is what it's going to cost. Then the cap fee study, which I attached in the board packet, forms the basis of the actual capacity fees. The master plan does not do that. That's a separate study. But we are on track for March 2016.
Okay, the approved, I'm sorry, one more.
Sure.
For an applicant to be included in this master plan, what's the drop dead date? What's the date he's got to be approved by the land use agency, whichever one it may be, in order for it to be included in the master plan?
We're shooting for June 30th,
June 30th of?
this month.
Oh, so it needs to be approved.
Well, the land use designation needs to be determined.
Yeah.
That's what we use, the land use designations as of June 30th.
Right.
Okay, we don't speculate as to whether or not they're gonna change after that. Per
Right.
se, we take that snapshot at that time. So they don't necessarily have to have their development approved, but it just needs to
The
be.
approved land use.
From a land use standpoint, it needs to be whatever that designation is.
Okay.
Okay.
By the end of this month.
Correct.
Which is another,
Yeah, we're actually already,
10 days.
we've already been in the process for 3 months now of actually obtaining all that data. So we started back in February or March, but what we've done is said, okay, and asked all the jurisdictional agencies, what do you think you'll have approved by June 30? Because we've got to move forward with the master plan. If we don't move forward with the master plan, then there's no way we'll hit our dates. We have to go back and start again, go back and start again. The way we deal with projects that are not in the master plan, we do what we call a supplemental master plan after the fact. We'll use Miriam Mountain by example. They don't have an approved land use. Let's say they came in 2017 ready to move forward. What we do is we take the basis of the existing master plan, we do a supplemental master plan, which uses all the same data, and then we just identify what their impacts would be as a separate study.
okay.
Yeah, that's the way it's always done. Yeah.
Okay, and this ordinance 177, the first time it was used by this district was the one we were talking about, 177, was the last master plan. It was never used before that, prior to that.
It was.
Because the growth wasn't spectacular.
No, from a history of the actual impact fees, Jeff probably has a little more backup just on the actual capacity fees. But the board actually adopted the first impact fee ordinance back in 2009. That was based upon feedback from the board back then of, with the high density development they were getting, the cost identified in our capacity fees was not adequate to mitigate the additional units. So back in 2009, Ordinance 164 was adopted. That included impacts for water storage, land outfall, that's the sewer pipe from here to Encina, treatment and disposal at Encina, and then the ocean outfall at Encina. So those four components were included in the old policy. When the new master plan was completed, three things happened. One, because of the new capacity fee structure, the water capacity fee included a piece in there for storage. So in other words, if you built 10 extra houses, you were paying 10 extra water fees and you were paying 10 extra pieces of the water storage component. So in other words, it mitigated its impact. Prior to that, in the old ordinance, let's say the impact was $3,000 for storage, grab a number, but the fee itself only had $2,000 in it. So we were $1,000 behind for every one additional one we built. That's hence the reason for the impact fee. The land outfall, when we did the 2008 master plan, because we get one last bite at the apple to put a new parallel outfall in, we're not going to build two of them. When we did the EIR, we specifically identified in there, we sized the outfall to ultimate build-out capacity, or 2040, I think, instead of the planning horizon of 2025. And we said right in there, we're doing that on purpose for these reasons. Because of that, the pipe was made big enough to allow for all growth within the district in a reasonable time frame. So if you paid extra EDUs because you built extra, there was a piece in the fee to cover the outfall. So the impact was mitigated by the way we did it. Prior to adoption of the last master plan and the fee structure, Encina completed their ocean outfall capacity study. Our two reps have seen that in the past. The outfall has nothing to do with treatment capacity. The outfall has to do with peaking capacity. In other words, if the flow peaks at 2 times, you can't stuff it through the pipe. You can't physically fit it. But if the flow only peaks at 1.8 times, the pipe's the right size. So peaking has no bearing on capacity from treatment. So make sure we understand that. Encina did that study while we were doing our master plan, doing the fee structure. What their study said was, because all of the 6-member partners have gotten our peaks under control, we aren't peaking like we used to. It used to be cheaper to peak and send it to the ocean than it was to build a treatment plant. Now it's cheaper to get your peaks under control than it is to build a new ocean outfall. The times have changed. Because of that, they removed that from the capacity fee and their cost structure, so we removed that from our components. We didn't need it. So 3 of the 4 pieces were no longer needed in the mitigation fee. So when the board adopted was it 177 in 2012, all it includes is the difference in treatment and disposal at Encina. So there's a cost, in these rough numbers here, of let's say $3,000 in the sewer capacity fee for treatment. That's paying off the debt. The board's made the point over the past couple of board meetings during the budget how we're deficit funding capacity fees, because you see the negative in the sewer. Well, it's because we've built it. Now we need to get the capacity fees in to pay the debt off. So that's how we do it. So in the sewer capacity fee is a cost. Let's say it's $3,000 to pay off that debt for the approved land use that's out there today. Now we know that if we need to expand Encina, the cost per gallon is more like $7,000, not $3,000. Because expanding this last piece, you don't go build and stretch a tank a little bit. You build a whole new one. So you don't get the economy of scale. So what the fee structure was adopted, the mitigation is if it's really $7,000 and there's only $3,000 in the fee, for every extra house you build, you pay the $4,000 difference. Those are rough numbers. I'm just throwing numbers out by example. So what you have in the board packet there is the actual capacity fee study that identified that, and it's the Nexus document that provided it. So it wasn't a prior policy. It was modified in the 2008 master plan, and then we will look at it again in the next master plan.
So if a project comes forward, I think with the update of the general plan for the city, I think most of the land uses have been identified as to their increase.
Mm-hmm.
That being said, if a project comes in prior to our new master plan with so many units, then there'll be a supplemental plan based on this year's, or this master plan that we're under?
Yes.
And based on whatever the units are that they have, over what the previous land use designation was, that's the capacity fee they will pay.
That's the impact fee for that portion, right.
And because we have passed just recently the payment of those fees, am I correct in saying that the payment of those fees can be either at permitting and or at final occupancy?
Yes.
And because some of these projects may not start until the middle of 15 and be a 15-month, 18-month process, they in fact could wait until the new capacity fees are identified and then pay that fee?
Theoretically, what the policy says is you pay the fee that's in place at the time you pay your fees.
Yes.
Yes.
Okay.
Director Portal? No, that pretty much answers it. Just if they didn't pay it up front, then they would have to pay whatever existing fees whatever fee was existing when they do file.
That's correct. Whatever the fee policy is in effect at the time.
Right.
Paying the fee and accepting the fee guarantees them
Yes.
water. And if they want to wait, who knows what'll happen? There's a crapshoot.
Well, you may recall when we approved those 3 phases of San Luis Hills that last 3 months ago, one paid them all up front, one paid part of them, and the other paid none of them. I think it's up to the developer and their comfort level on knowing they have a commitment of service when they put that kind of money into behind the property.
Okay, and one last question is, ordinance 177 is the same or similar to an ordinance that the other two growth agencies in our district, or our area, not our district, in San Diego County, I guess. The city of San Diego and Otay, because they're growth agencies, they've done the same thing?
You know, the city of Otay handles water. I think it's Chula Vista that does sewer. This was a question that got brought up a couple of years ago, and generally the feedback I got was they knew this was going to be an issue somewhere down the road. They chose to just deal with it somewhere down the road. City of San Diego, I think they probably have a little better flexibility because they've got a 1-point-something billion gallon per day treatment plant, and they have the ability to probably control their flows a little better. Whether or not they deal with this, I'm not sure. The other issue that we have that comes into play is water. SB 221 and 610 are both two studies that we have to do, the district has to do. It can't be done by the developer. If it's over 500 units and 1 million, some square feet, some large amount of square footage. And what happened was years ago when the drought was coming on, all these projects were being approved, but it was paper water. It was not real water. So they had to go 30 years out in the future and guarantee, or 99 years, whatever it is. So whenever it comes in at that size, that's what started this whole discussion about 10 years ago. We had done, I want to say 5 or 6 of these water supply assessments, and each one stands alone. You don't take the one that we did for Director Evans and add it to the one we did for Director Hernandez and add it to yours. You look at it as a snapshot. Well, yeah, we have water for your project. We don't look at anything else, so it's kind of a myopic look to see. Part of what the Water Authority has done, because ourselves, San Diego and Otay are in the same position, is they've done their urban water management plan out to 2050 or 2040. I'm not sure what they're doing this year. We'll be working with them on it. And they also then identified a little pool of water that's out here. It's not surplus water, it's future water. It's there, but for agencies like ourselves and Otay, so let's say one of these high-density projects comes in, we have to do this study. We have to identify that differential. We have to let the Water Authority know we need that water, because that's above and beyond the SANDAG and our approved land use. So we've got to actually go let the Water Authority know we need you to reserve that for us in the future. So there's some big impacts when we do that. The water is tough. The sewer is a matter of just building something. I hate to say it, but the sewer is just a matter of build a big pipe, build a big treatment plant. Water's a little bit tougher. So it's impacting the 3 of us on water. So all 3 of us, the only ones really that are the growth agencies that have to do that. The others they might tear down 10 units and put up 15. So it's not a big impact to them. So it's something that we need to continue looking at. The new master plan will determine the impact of do we or do we not need sewer capacity for treatment. If the master plan says we need it, well, then the board's gonna have to come up with a decision and policy on, we don't need it yet. If you change the density and suddenly somebody goes up significantly, is it fair to take that high cost and spread it out over all the other people who wouldn't be paying it if it wasn't for increased density? Or is there still a mitigation fee? So this is what you can be grappling with come 2016. And if you might, I actually did talk to Jeff because Director Sinella is new to the board on the whole concept of capacity fees and where they come from. I asked Jeff to put together a quick brief history.
You've been talking for 10 minutes.
Well, that is brief for me.
But, you know, it was kind of in response to Director Hernandez's request, I think it was, or no, it was your request, Al, about revisiting the settlement agreement, which Dennis provided to you all. But I think it's kind of important to go back in history a little bit, just to get how this comes up in the context, the historic context. And, you know, I'd like to take you back about 30 years ago, because one of the things that the prior boards, yeah, I was a lot skinnier then, and, you know, really much more, yeah, so, anyway, it's kind of to understand this notion of capacity fees and where we started and where we've come. I think it would be helpful. And I would go back to beginning in the mid-'80s, the San Marcos Unified School District came to the district and the district board basically, and they said, look, you know, based on our reading of the law and some cases that had come down at that time, they took the position that the school was no longer going to pay sewer capital facility fees. They felt that, hey, you know, residents in the community already pay capacity fees when they build their houses. And now you're asking them to build the schools, you know, when they go to the kids go to school. And so they felt that, the district board felt that the users of the sewer system should basically, all users should pay their fair share of the impact that they had on the sewer system. So the school districts, other public agencies like the school district, because they built buildings and facilities, they needed to pay their fair share. And the board felt very strongly about that. And they didn't want the local residents, because somebody's gonna have to pay for these facilities, so they didn't want the local residents to have to necessarily pay for this impact. And they also felt like new development shouldn't have to necessarily pay for that, because somebody's got to pay for these capital facilities to provide service. So to avoid protracted, expensive litigation, what the water district did and the school district at the time, and I think Ken Lounsbury originally was one of the attorneys, and then it became somebody else because Ken went on to do something else at the time. But in any event, we agreed that we would present this to the court on an agreed case basis. And basically what that means is that the parties would stipulate to the facts and the legal issues, and then we would brief our basic legal positions. That way we didn't have to go through a big trial and discovery process. We felt like this was something that we could save taxpayers and residents money by doing it this way. So that's what we agreed to do. And we submitted it to the trial court here. And the trial court looked at the issue and really felt that public agencies should pay their fair share of impacts on the, whether it's sewer capital facility fees or water capital facility fees. And so we were victorious in the trial court. And of course, at that point, they decided they were going to appeal it. So they appealed it to the 4th District down here, and the 4th District also agreed that the school district should pay their fair share of capital facility fees. Since they felt that it was a special assessment and there was not statutory authorization for one public agency to collect capacity fees from another public agency, they appealed it to the California Supreme Court. And that, we basically got what is well known in circles as the San Marcos case. And that case is still alive and well today. I mean, it's still floating around there, and if you go to conferences and things like that, and you talk about capacity fees, people are familiar with the San Marcos case. And what the court held in the San Marcos case was that public entities cannot be made subject to capital facility fees without statutory authorization, because they characterized capacity fees, unfortunately, as special assessments, okay, more of a nature of a tax, really, than what they truly are and have been borne out to be, which are user or impact fees. So as a result of that, there was really a statewide issue with respect to fiscal stability and service capabilities of utility districts all over the state. The Donovan Prison was being built in southern San Diego County. There was a linguistic facility that the federal government was building in Monterey. In Chico, the Cal State Chico was expanding. We were looking at having the university come in here, the San Marcos State University. So there was really some concerns that, hey, wait a minute, if we can't collect these from public agencies, somebody's going to have to pay, and it's really going to be difficult. So in response to that, in 1988, the legislature passed Government Code Section 54999 et seq., which was a series of statutes. And what's unique about those statutes, that you can look through all the codes in all the books, that, you know, civil codes and government codes and all this stuff, and that you don't see the kind of what this statute says right in its beginning. It says, the legislature finds that the holding in the San Marcos County Water District versus San Marcos Unified School District case should be revised to authorize payment and collection of capital facility fees, and in furtherance of this finding, the legislature hereby enacts the following provisions. Thus, the ability to collect capital facility fees from public agencies was authorized, and the district's principle that a user pays his fair share was upheld. And so for years, you know, that was basically, thank goodness, you know, we were able to continue to do business, and I don't want to say as usual, but we were basically made the user pay. So then you look at over the last 25 years, basically we've adopted, you know, as part of orderly planning, we address the increased developments needs, and the districts adopted various master plans and master plan updates that Dennis has described, and typically they occur on an average about every 5 years. So part of that process is a determination of the capital projects necessary to address water, wastewater, and water reclamation, okay? And those needs. So once those projects are identified and the costs are identified, then the capital facility fees are addressed. So that's the way we did business for many years. You basically had a sewer capital facility fee, water capital facility fee. Now, in the last decade, it's become apparent that because land use densities were and we're not a land use agency, we don't control that, we just react to it. Because the densities were being increased at a significant increase, there was something we needed to do to, at least for the time being, to try to address that. So that spawned this density impact fee, and so the user, again, this basic principle that the user pays their fair share. And so that's kind of how we got here. And it's a rolling ball, and we're going to do another master plan update, and we may come back to you, and they're going to look at what would be the appropriate capital facility fees based upon the various land use designations, and we may or may not even have a density impact fee. I mean, that's something that we're going to look at, and we're going to ultimately make that decision. But all this has to be understood, I think, in a historic context, and with the understanding that the driving principle has been that the user pays their fair share. So.
Any questions from the directors? Director Snell.
Yeah, and thank you, Jeff. This is a little bit of a learning curve for me, and I appreciate the time that you took with that little presentation. So, just to clarify and kind of talk myself through this process, we only have the density impact fees for the wastewater. We don't have it for water or
Correct.
for, okay.
And
Um,
it's only for wastewater treatment at Encina. None of our own facilities.
Okay. Now, normally the concept is if you buy in bulk or you build in bulk, there's some economies of scale and things actually cost less.
Yep.
So are we on some sort of tiered system like we have for our water rates with Encina? Do they charge us a higher portion of the cost of treating the waste if the more we send through them, or where's the increased cost?
Okay, you may recall the general manager for Kevin, when he addressed the board and he talked about the budget. And you asked the question why our budget went up 1% and some of the others went up 3% and 5%, and then why we got such a big chunk back and the others got a smaller chunk back. The one statement he made, and this is what we strive to do, it's orderly planning, is build what you need just in time when you need it. In other words, I use the example, I believe City of Vista, they have a they have an equivalent share of capacity that we have, yet they haven't used it for many years. So they chose to build extra capacity years ago. They've never used it. The way you pay your bills at Encina is twofold. One is on strength of sewage. 4 times a year we test the strength. That's part of your treatment costs. And the other is ownership. So if the Encina treatment plant costs $100 million a year to run, and you own 20%, you get $20 million a year, your fair share, because you own that big of a piece. Okay, so we've kept our share in a reasonable spot. When we completed
So our shares, we own smaller.
we actually own the same amount. Remember, we just approved Phase 5. That's where that extra $2 million came back as we paid the capital up front. So back in 1991, they were looking at going into their Phase 5 expansion. So what we provided was based on our master plan. Okay, in 95, we think we'll be flowing this much. 2001, we'll be flowing this much. 2006, we'll be flowing this much. This is what we project we need in these time increments. So when they did the Phase 5 design, which literally was 13 years ago, 14 years ago when we started, this is what we said we need 15, 20 years from now. What we projected around 2025-ish, we said we would need 12.5 million gallons per day of sewer treatment capacity. That's what we said we would need. So the board, 10 years ago, whenever it was, we approved the expansion of Meadowlark to 5 million. We told Encina we needed 7.5 million added over there, so a total of 12.54 million gallons per day. Well, by the time you get down with the numbers and everything else, we actually have 12.83, but it's just a matter of what happens. So that's what we physically own. So the master plan, when we did the fees, we don't need any more now, up to 2030. We're good. We need no new treatment capacity. So there's no money in our capacity fee to collect for treatment. We don't need it.
On known land use.
On known land use. So your question on economy of scale. Okay, so we're at the point now where if we start changing land use and we need more treatment capacity, we can't take what was just built and blow it up a little bit. We might have to build a whole new pump station. We may have to build a whole new digester. We may have to build this. So there is no more economy of scale.
Well, in those cases where you actually do have to build the new infrastructure, there's no longer any economies of scale.
Right.
Why is it just automatically, we're gonna charge this additional, I think, if I'm reading this correctly, $3,183 for every unit above what was planned initially, even if in cases that we might not have to add infrastructure? Why don't we make that decision on a case by case? And then the other question I had on the Encina is why, I still don't understand if the additional units are still paying a fee. The same fee that everybody else does. Where does the additional, I don't know, it's probably 40%?
The additional, okay, well, the fee that's in there is the current debt service to have built.
I understand that they should
Okay.
definitely have to pay
Right.
whatever everybody else does. I don't understand why they have to pay 40% more.
Because
for-
you have, if you use an example of, let's say they were allowed 500 units and they're gonna build 1,000. Okay, we now need to build capacity for another 500 units. You can't assume 15 years from now that 500 units somewhere else will not be built. You don't have that authority.
So Dennis, here's my confusion. And I don't want to, we can maybe have a meeting on this, but if you were able to build the infrastructure for the first 500 homes based off the fees that they paid, why does the second 500 homes
Economy
have
scale.
to pay an extra 40%?
Economy of scale. The cost to build this tank might have been 70,000. The cost to build another 10,000 gallons is not gonna be 70,000, it's gonna be 300,000. Because I've got to build a whole new piece of facility. When you do economy of scale, we share in the cost. Let's say you're the
Why would
five
you need a
partners.
smaller tank though they're both 500 units?
No, no.
One's more efficient?
All 5 of you came in at the same time as member agencies, and we said we needed 3 million gallons of tank. So we built a 3 million gallon tank. So we share in the economy of scale the cost per gallon. Now, when we need to build the next tank of 1,000 gallons, you 5 are no longer at the party. It's just us. So the cost of that standalone facility now has to be borne totally by us. What I will tell you is the cost estimate that's in there that we base that on is on the low side. We already know that, but the master plan will identify that this time. So you are correct. How could we build it cheap for the first 3,000? It's because all 5 of us were at the table building it, and we got economy of scale. When we build the next piece of the tank, the next 5 of you are not there. Now, the saving grace that we have, and it was in the original policy of 164, is that some of the member agencies have excess capacity over at Encina. They don't need it. So in the policy of the RBA, the Revised Basic Agreement, Encina allows for that capacity to be sold. So we had that in the original policy, but what we didn't know was Encina was going through the Phase 5 expansion, they were going through the Phase 5 reconciliation, and all of the numbers. So the numbers that we could tell a developer or base the fee on, we didn't know what it was. They just completed that 3-4 months ago, so now we have firm numbers. So what we can identify if this goes forward into the future will be, okay, taking advantage of the economy of scale, there's some extra capacity in there. So maybe it turns out to be $5,000 a unit. We're already collecting 4, so it'd only be $1,000 difference because we take advantage of that economy of scale. The trick is that agency has to agree to sell it, and all of the partners have to agree to let us buy it. So what happened last time was a couple of developers started calling the agencies individually, calling Encina and saying, we need a number. It just went bad very quickly, so we just pulled that out of the policy. But that would be considered next time we do it. But you are correct. It's cheaper to build it big as economy scale for everybody than it's going to be for us. That's why the cost is higher.
Yeah, I didn't realize that you were sharing the initial cost with other agencies.
Yeah,
so
we
that-
share with
that
all
helps as
6,
well.
all 6 member agencies.
It's interesting. I would like to.
But if you'd like to come in
Definitely,
sometime,
yeah.
we sit down and go through it, I think it would be worth the exercise.
Okay.
Be happy to do
Thank
it.
you.
Any other questions from the board?
And I would recommend, not only you, Mike, but any of the board members in the future, spend a lot of time, as we did last year on this item. I think we had 2 or 3 or maybe 4 workshops.
A lot.
And still had questions, as I did today.
But I'd be happy to, Mike, we'll get hold of you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
I still have questions, but I think it's a note and file.
Thank you.
There's no action to be taken. Thank you very much, staff. All right, then we're gonna move to, 2.6, reimbursement requested by Director Hernandez.
Yes.
And Jim, we do have your PowerPoint able to show on the screen.
And I would leave it up to the board. I don't know if everyone's had a chance to peel through that, or if you'd like, I can spin through it and explain why I got there when I got there.
I think that would be a really good idea for you to do that.
I'd be happy to do that.
And have our staff see the wonderful work.
Oh, the staff hasn't seen it. Well, I know
we get
Lisa
to
hasn't
see
seen
it.
it.
Actually, I have to run it from here to where I.
Oh, okay.
And because of the version of the PowerPoint.
Fine.
I need-
That's perfect for me. I don't care.
Are you going to make the presentation to us, Jim?
Well, would you like that,
What's the
Mike?
matter?
I'm just letting him know that I need to advance this slide.
I think you,
Oh.
I think if you want your supper, you're gonna have to dance.
But just give me a note.
I'll give you that.
Do we have to turn a little handle?
Or, yeah, or at least a soft shoe, Jim, at least a soft shoe.
Is that the first slide? Thank you very much. How this has arrived is that I had a presentation to make to the San Marcos Chamber and the Better Business Group in San Marcos. And short of hand puppets, I decided to put together a PowerPoint presentation. Well, actually, I didn't put it together. I did a storyboard and then had it put together. And so this is the beginning of it, and I introduced myself and the Vallecitos Water Board, and I said, back in the middle 50s, when everybody else was thinking about James Dean, the king.
Is that you on the upper left?
Pardon?
Is that you on the upper left?
It is me in the lower left.
Oh.
And fast cards. There were 5 old guys that decided that they wanted to, they were running out of groundwater and needed more water, so they decided to form the San Marcos Water District. And of course, everyone knows that behind all great men is a great woman, and so that's why it's a lovely lady. Primarily, the use was for agriculture, but they knew in the future that population and the economy were going to continue, and of course, the presentation was a little more elaborate, so I'm just spinning through this for time purposes. And this is our board. We're in divisions, and you can see who the board members are in the divisions. And this is the layout of our district and the various divisions and associated board members for those divisions. Some statistics. I went through the statistics. I got the information out of our web. Lisa helped me, Dennis helped me, so that in fact I could talk to them specifically about how many miles and how many pipes and what our budget was. This is where some of our water comes from up north. It also comes across from the Colorado River. We have arrangements with various agencies, and of course the through the Imperial Valley we have their excess water. Water, everyone talks about how much water is water. Well, here we have it. An acre foot of water is about 6 swimming pools full. It covers a football field, 1 acre deep, and a cubic foot is the size of a basketball. And I particularly put this up because we constantly hear engineers are always talking about cubic foot per second. And it really never dawned on me until I went to these conferences and thinking about our San Marcos Creek when it overflows. I mean, that's 10 to 20,000 cubic feet of water passing through. So you can imagine from San Marcos Boulevard to Discovery, which is about 500 feet, if it's 10,000 cubic feet per second, that's 500 basketballs, 20 feet tall, 1, 2, 3, 4. So that's a lot of water. So I wanted people to understand what that was. Average use per household, 15 units, various uses there, and of course, talking about how much was used for landscaping versus how much for personal use. And then I broke that down even further, 15 gallons for shower, unless you're, of course, for my son, and he's been there for way too long. Laundry, toilets, and kitchens. This was the interesting one. This is the global usage per person per day. The United States, we're about 100 gallons per person per day. Australia, 76. France is 43, and if you've been to France, you probably know why that's so small. And if you've been to England, you absolutely know why that was so small. Africa, 12 gallons per day per person. And if you had to carry water 2 miles on your head, we'd be way down on the chart as well. So, no drought about it. Some of the areas that are out there that were in this drought, Shasta, pictures of that, Folsom Lake, Lake Mead, all down. Cost of water, bottled water, 8-ounce bottle of water. If you got to a gallon of water, $5.70. Ours is 6/100 of a penny. The graphic there, I couldn't get 6/100 because it's not even a green line, but shows you how economic our water is. What we've done, because over the years we have asked for a little bit more in our water rates because we wanted to ensure that when the droughts that we are presently experiencing, unlike up north where they're actually trucking water into some desperate communities, we spent money on San Vicente Dam, we installed the Twin Oaks Valley storage facilities, we have contracts with Poseidon, and of course Lake Hodges. And conservation versus rising costs, I talked just briefly about things that could be accomplished to lower their water rates, and of course moving into more native plants. And the future, more conservation, more transparency, indirect and direct potable. I went on to explain a little bit about each one of those. And then the San Diego North County Regional Recycling Area, I showed the areas that were involved, and I showed potentially where those recycling opportunities could come for reclaimed water. and I think then I ask question and answers. Great feedback from the community in the presentation. They all had a much better absolute understanding. They applauded the fact that the district was out trying to give more information to individuals. And so this is the presentation that I paid $200 for, that I personally needed in order to, and have been using in the times that I have spoke. And I've offered it to, you know, if the reimbursement is approved, I mean, it's not copyright, if anybody could use it, I'm happy to give it up to anyone. So
I think they've already sent it to us.
I'm sorry?
They've already sent it to us.
I know, so you have it already.
We had
So
we had a
steal
coupon.
it, plug it in, take it anywhere you want. So, and that's the reason I was asking for the reimbursement.
Okay.
Good job, Jim.
Questions of the board?
So,
Director Podol.
thank you. So, when we had our meeting up at the university and we were discussing this, we were discussing the type of information we wanted to go out to the public and how we wanted this PowerPoint to go. And we saw a presentation that was put together by the district, and I imagine they have other ones as well. But it was agreed upon at that time by the entire board that we would further research and come up with a PR firm to put together this PowerPoint. And that's where it's at. So it was complete agreement by the entire board about the direction we were going to go. So it's pre-approved, and that's what we're doing. So while I think your presentation was good, Jim, for what you were doing, I have no idea if the facts were valid. It's not something that the board prior approved of. And so I think, you know, to come to the board afterwards for something that you put together, which we are in the process of putting together, is not a valid request.
And I understood that. And, you know, that's why I'm making the request. The staff did put together a presentation that we saw at the meeting, which was, and I did appreciate that it was rapidly put together and it could have been buffed up, but it was inappropriate, not inappropriate, that's not the right word. It was not what I would have allowed to be presented to anyone, because it just was too wordy, the graphics were weak, and it had no personality at all. So that's why I took it upon myself, because I was doing the presentation, as we had discussed that we were allowed to do, to put something together that was a little more lively, certainly more personality to it. And I did understand that we were going to have a group come in to do a much more thorough branding and presentation, but quite frankly, I didn't think I wanted to wait and just show up with hand puppets for that particular presentation. So I took it upon myself. I'm asking for a reimbursement of $200, and I would appreciate your support.
Any directors, anyone else?
I can
Yeah.
send
Huh?
Sorry, you looked too quickly before I got it up.
I'm trying.
Good job, Director Hernandez. I like the initiative that you took to put something together. I really do like the information that you're presenting. And maybe I'm looking at this from a little bit too much from a risk management or even a legal standpoint, but I guess there's a question for you, Jeff. If we do reimburse, right, as of right now, I visualize this as, this was Jim's initiative. He wanted to do some community outreach, which is his prerogative. He put together some notes about the district and he went and presented. If we reimburse him, purchase this, whatever we want to call it, from him, do we now own it? And I don't mean own it in the sense that it's ours, we can use it however we want to. I mean own it as in the information, some of the pictures. I know that they're historical pictures, but I don't know if we need to have James Dean smoking a cigarette on our, official district communication to the public. Where do we have, where do we stand as far as legality, as far as what's said? Even the comment, five guys and one woman, there's some issues. I mean, not issues, but just from a risk standpoint, do we have any?
I don't think you have practically any legal risk there. I mean, it really goes down to whether or not, you look at it from a policy standpoint, the appropriateness of it. I don't see any real legal exposure. I am not clear as to what the $200 is for.
I hired
I mean, all I'm saying is that what you want to make sure, I'm looking at it,
Oh.
I'd almost defer to Tom, but normally the guys that come in and do the audits, they're gonna want to see invoices
Oh, no, they're-
and backup and substantiation
And
for
I would-
whatever in other
Right.
words, it's a good idea to have something that you can look to substantiate the
Thank you. And I-
request, that's all.
And I certainly can provide that
Yeah.
invoice that's paid so that there is a paper trail, and there really
Yeah.
is, so.
But I don't, to answer your question, I don't think there's a legal issue as far as liability that I can see.
Is there, I've got a couple more questions. Is there any historical precedent of paying a board member for something like this or anything similar?
No.
No? Okay. And, to kind of echo a little bit of Director Podol's comments, I do agree that we are actually now, especially that we just added the position in the budget officially today, we're headed down a path of coming together with a professional, standard presentation. So I wouldn't mind giving this to whoever takes on that position as a full-time position and kind of giving them a starting point, but I think it's a step in the right direction, Jim, but I also think that it still needs a little bit of fine-tuning.
This was not meant to
Supplant.
What's the word?
Substitute, supplant.
Substitute, thank you very much. Substitute any professional organization from coming in and doing a PowerPoint. That was not the intent, and I understood that from the beginning. This was a presentation that I needed to put together because I just didn't want to go up there. I know President Martin had previous speaking engagements where he just went up there and talked. And
With my puppets.
hand puppets. Well, they work on occasion, but I did not want to do that. I felt this was a little more professional way of presenting it, again, with some personality, and primarily mine, because I was the one that did the storyboard. So but it was not meant to be any portion, unless they wanted to look at for future consultants.
No, absolutely, and again, I applaud you for taking the initiative and certainly within your prerogative to put together a presentation. I still have personally some troubles with if we reimburse you for your costs associated with this. I feel at that point, as a district and as a board, we've now taken ownership of that document, and that ownership should represent the quality and the presentation, if you will, of what we want to accomplish, both as a district and as a board.
Anyone else?
Thank you.
Director Evans.
President Martin.
Please go ahead.
I don't want to waste time saying the same things, but I would like to point out, you did do a fine job for yourself. And I think there's a lot of commendable points in it, Jim. But in respect to what Mike has said, I'm not convinced that I, for one, as a board member, would have approved that if that was the presentation given by whoever we are going to use. Because I do have a little conflict with the smoking James Dean, and Marilyn Monroe, and a little bit with the five guys and a cute girl behind them. So
She wasn't
that I
cute.
have, that's just me, but I do have that's a little bit not, I'll say it's offensive, but I don't think that's the way I want our district to be presented. And I also agree with Director Podol in that I felt was very clear at that meeting, it wasn't the convenient timing for everyone's desire to go out and present or who have made a commitment, but we did say at that time we would come together as a full unit and move forward, and that's been in progress. So I understand why you would do this for your own benefit, but I don't feel that it's would be appropriate for us as a board to then reimburse you for your own efforts unless we were certain that this one would be our policy. And one thing I would like to say for the presentation at that workshop, I may be misunderstanding it, but I don't believe that was a presentation of how our outreach would go out to public. I think what was being presented was a huge collection of facts that are available and that the district is aware of, and they were presenting them not as, this is how I got to public. My understanding was, and I could be wrong, but it was more that they were saying, this is all the information's out there. Dennis was asking Lisa to present all that we had, and then it would be is there something we're missing? Not in the presentation, but in the information. And I think perhaps because the prior subcommittee had met, you were expecting a presentation, but I felt it was just all the information, and because I think all 5 of us agreed that wasn't what we would have accepted as a presentation either. So at this point, I think you've put together a very nice presentation, and I do like, particularly I thought your presentation on the waters was excellent, the gallons and that. But it would be very difficult to support it, and I do think it kind of opens the door for all of us going out and doing our own little thing, and then I'd rather we just do it as a policy starting fresh, which I believe we start
Thursday.
next week?
Next week.
Next week.
Okay, my opinion on this is really mixed, so please bear with me. I certainly understand Director Hernandez's frustration. When I first came on the board, in 2012, one of my first conversations with Jim was that he wanted to do a public outreach during his presidency. And we discussed it, and I know we discussed it with staff, but nothing happened. Nothing happened. And I understand things take a long time, but it's a question of what your priorities are, and maybe the board didn't make it clear enough, or maybe the votes weren't there to make it a more pressing matter. So he's gone through his year of presidency with nothing happening, and he's 3 or 4 months into the next guy's presidency and nothing's happened. We formed a committee, and I didn't personally believe in the committee process, because I think when you want to kill something, you form a committee. When you want to kill it forever, make it larger. I think as a publicly elected official, as we all are, I think it's incumbent upon ourselves when someone asks us to come and give a presentation about what we do and what they elected us for, that we have a duty to do that. Again, understanding his frustration that he can go out and talk to people, but he didn't have the tools to do it. We were talking about doing some type of PowerPoint. And Lisa did a wonderful job, I thought, of presenting what she does, but I don't think that was the essence of what the board wanted. And as we can see here today, looking at that PowerPoint, there's pieces I like, there's pieces I don't like. Everyone's gonna have a different choice, because it's very personal, how you give a presentation. There's not a standard. We're not staff, we're elected officials. So we pick and choose. The sense of humor I certainly got with the 5 old guys, and there's a great woman behind him. I got the sense of humor. It's not something I would use, but I can see you using that, Jim. Everyone looks at it differently. And I think this consortium that we're gonna be speaking to this young lady coming up, she's gonna come up with a presentation, I assume, and it's gonna fit some of us, and it's not gonna fit some of us. I think, and I could be wrong, but reimbursement after the fact has happened sometime during IUCS's life. You said it hasn't, and I'm going, well, reimbursement after the fact of its request.
Well, I don't think.
Maybe not for a PowerPoint.
Yeah, no, I think the question was whether or not we've done anything like this. But
Oh, okay.
it's not a question, it's, in your prerogative, and there's been issues with respect to paying for something after the fact over
Right.
the years, of course.
So that's what being asked to do, is pay for something after the fact.
Right.
That's what Jim's asked us to do here, and we've done it before. $200 is not a major amount of money I don't know how much we're gonna be spending on this person, but it's gonna be multi-times fold more than that. And we're gonna get something that some people will use and some people won't. As an elected official, I will still go out there and do what I do, because that's what I do and that's what people elected me for. I will try to stay with all the guidelines, but
People elect you because of the person you are, not because of the standard that the water district puts out there, because that's my opinion on it, at least, whatever that's worth. So, with that said, I can go either way. I would not condone this to happen in the future. I'm certainly not condoning it, but it's a price after the fact. It's, okay, I'm coming, I spent this money, I did my presentation, I didn't disappoint these people out there in the public that asked me to do it, and I don't know. Again, legally, there's no problem. It's a question of Tom. If you have the proper receipts from the proper people and it's done correctly, like I said, it'll be interesting to see the roll call vote, because I believe that Mr. Hernandez would have to recuse himself. Would that be correct? We would take a vote?
Yeah, I think it's probably a good idea.
Yeah, he would have to recuse himself, and he shouldn't be sitting up here right now, should he?
Well,
But it's only $200.
$200. I mean,
Exact, thank you. That's how I look at it. It's $200. Yes, sir, Mr. Porter, Director Porter.
Thank you. So I look at it not about the money. It's that the board had agreed upon a direction we were going, and we're going in that direction. So this was kind of something that Director Hernandez felt he had to do, and was something Director Hernandez did for himself. So for us to pay $200 for something that we're not going to use, that does not represent the entire board, I think is, no matter what it costs, I don't think it's appropriate. So,
Do we have the ability to change it in any way, to make changes? Let's say somebody liked it but didn't have, is that possible to do?
Well, I mean, I think the point that Mike made, that, you know, if you pay for this, it's sort of, you're endorsing it, okay? And it doesn't mean you couldn't, I'm sure that you could take this and change it and do other things with it and put other stuff in it if you wanted to expand on it.
It's just a PowerPoint presentation. We could change it however we want it, but I would tell you, with what you have here, we would not use it at staff level.
Well, no, and I agree, not everybody would use it. I would be bits and pieces, just like I would have used staffs as presented at that meeting. I would use bits and pieces of that and wouldn't have liked that whole thing. Everyone's gonna be different up here giving a presentation. There's not one format fits all. I don't know.
I don't think there's any expectation of privacy, so to speak, at this point, since it's been disseminated and shared in the public.
Okay. So with Mr. Hernandez not voting, the question on the table is, should he or should he not be reimbursed? Unless there's any other thing that anyone else would like to say?
do we have to take action on
It's before you for a direction and action.
Yeah, you'd have to make a motion, I think, to consider it.
Okay, looking for a motion, somebody. I'll move to consider it. And I need a second. Hearing no second, the motion is not approved. Thank you, board. Tough decision. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Hernandez.
You're welcome.
All right, we'll move on to reports. General manager report.
Believe it or not, no report.
No report. Nothing going on.
Nothing going on.
You know, and if you want to clear a room, just have the attorney start speaking.
You almost did it earlier.
I'm so glad Joe stayed, you know, thanks for my history lesson, but I have nothing, Mr. Chairman. Okay.
Move on to San Diego County Water Authority.
And actually, I have no report either. The meeting is next Thursday.
Encina Wastewater Capital Improvements, the CI.
Yes, we did have a meeting this morning, finally, and the three topics that the plant rehab is continuing, going along famously. The master plan for 2040 is been underway, and we received a report and an executive summary that we digested a bit, that we in fact sent back, that it needed to be digested even further because it was, I mean, the report was 1.5 inches thick, and the executive summary was 17 pages, and we all agreed that you needed to apply the 33 and 30 rule, 30 seconds, 3 minutes, and 30 minutes, and this was, you know, after you got through page 2, you would have tossed it. So they're gonna take that back, and they're gonna rework that, or perhaps they're gonna make another one that's very quick. And the big issue that came up was the south parcel. They, it's gonna be, I think it's gonna finally be pushed to a vote. They are, the general manager is at, it started out with a conversation relative to the consultant, Capstone, saying, well, you need, who's gonna represent you during the city of Carlsbad, I keep losing this damn term. Well, general plan
amendment.
General plan amendment. Staff, the district is not capable, just not expert in what to do and how to follow it. But Capstone, on the other hand, has said, hey, we've been here 3 years, and we've been participating, you know, we have other things to do. So what they wanted us to do was to agree to a guaranteed time for negotiation. And then they would do this on an hourly basis to follow it through. A few of us felt that that was a little bit too aggressive in that we then must discuss it with them, negotiate with them, and then if we didn't like the negotiations, then we could go to other developers. As I waited later to talk to Kevin, it really wasn't that, they wanted to become the master developer. And the master developer would then put together the plan, put together the budget, put together the management, and then potentially put it out to developers to finish the project, if in fact the board desired to go that direction. That boiled into, well, do we keep the thing? How much do we need for safety to do things in the future? And it was the same rehashing of hashing that has taken place. And Kevin, I have never seen him, oh no, he was worse than that.
Yeah.
I've never seen him go over the edge on this like he did at our meeting. And he said, I have spent more money on this issue and more time, 55 months, 3 or 4 years ago, talking to Hohen, to go nowhere. He says, it's time to, and he was very bold in his statement, and I will not state it here, it's time to paint or get off the ladder. He didn't use that analogy, but it's coming, and there's gonna be a
remember
get
that.
off the ladder
I gotta remember that one,
believe,
paint or get off the ladder. I like
yeah,
that.
at the board. And so, some of us encouraged it.
You gotta remember, Jim, this is the 3rd time around.
Yeah, oh, no, it's gonna be, I think, the last time, because there's too many issues. The issue of what to do with it, the revenues that are gonna be created, the concern about what the future's gonna hold on recycled water and storage and all that, and the concern that leaving it as it is just an opportunity for environmentalists to come and continue to claim more properties, community to come and say it's theirs. So I think we're gonna see this thing come to an
The
end.
fear factor, you always gotta throw that in.
Yeah, so,
If you don't,
This could happen.
so this is coming to a head sooner than later, I believe.
thank you. Any questions of Mr. Hernandez? Seeing nothing, we'll move to NC's wastewater policy and finance committee.
Yeah, we met on June 10th, talked about the same things, really, the south parcel. And of course, for those of you who don't know, the south parcel is just about vacant land and what's going to be its future use. And if we're not going to use it, can it be an income to all the agencies, member agencies? And that's kind of what it rotates around. And I think Kevin is just saying, he's put too much time in it, he doesn't want to do it anymore, and he's not qualified to do it, and he's got other things, and we're going to take it to a vote, which we've done before, so. Anyway, we talked about the fiscal year 2014 fourth quarter operating program budget transfer. We had discussion about Rady School of Business, Pure Green Marketing. So what that is we're using the Rady School of Business, we're using students who are going in for the master's degrees to do studies for us. When I say us, I mean Encina Wastewater, on their Pure Green products. And so they're doing studies as to how to market, what the market is, what's the best way to go out and get your money for it, just a lot of things that people in the industry don't know, in our industry, as far as sanitation and wastewater. So they're providing a great service, and a graduating class just did a summation of it. It was really good information. The next class that's coming in is going to take it from there and take it a little bit further. So it's really nice way to go without spending a lot of money. And then we talked about general manager performance review, and so we're putting together a kind of a more of a streamlined review, because Encina, as Vallecitos, is pretty confident with their general manager. He's been around a long time, and we seem to be spending a lot of time each year doing performance review that maybe isn't necessary to go in depth as much as we do. And so we're trying to come up with something at Encina's that everybody can still get in their information they need to get in, as far as questions or comments they want to make as general manager, but not take as much as staff time to go over that performance. Or maybe do it every 2 years, or maybe do it every 3 years, and something a little bit less demanding for everybody. So we'll let you know how that goes. That's all I got.
How many members are on the board?
Yeah,
10, but it's an equivalent vote of 12,
Yeah,
because the
'cause
city
it's
of Vista
weighted.
represents also represent the county of San Diego. So there's 10 seated, but there's 12 seats.
Most of them are city council.
There's 10 seats.
But it represents 12 votes.
And are they weighted votes?
Yes. It goes by weighted. They can call for a weighted vote based on ownership of the plant. That is it's a normal roll call like you would do.
Right.
But if it comes down to a tie, they can call for a weighted vote.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Does that happen?
We only had one circumstance that almost came about 2 years ago on the budget, because of staff increases. When one of the agencies was taking a cut, they felt increases shouldn't be there, so it almost came down to it, but it went 6-4.
Is there a 600-pound gorilla?
No.
Everyone's about 20% there.
We're actually getting to be the 600-pound gorilla as far as ownership. But I would say if anybody carried the weight, it would be the city of Vista, because they also represent Buena. So they carry 2 ownerships.
Jim, you're the current president of that
Yeah.
board? And is that an annual, like, is that like ours, or once a year?
Yep.
Interesting.
No other questions? Thank you. Director's reports on travel, conference, and seminars. Who would like to start? Director Hernandez.
We had a grand presentation at the Water Council on 218. It was a nice refresher course, and it was very thorough. And when you don't do this every day, it was nice to see just how the thing came about and what you're supposed to do, and some of the different elements within it. I thought it was very worthy.
Okay. Director Pohl?
Just adding on to that, this thing, it's a compliment to our staff, how we kind of stay between the lines, because it seems like it's getting more and more complicated, and how easily you could be brought into court on certain issues, so.
If you noticed all the areas where they did get in trouble, they were always kind of on the guardrail. Instead of staying in the middle of the road, they were to the fringe of seeing if they could do it. The Palmdale case was the one that hit a couple of years ago. That was the most egregious, where it was just, no, let's just do it this way. And that one didn't work well.
Yeah. And it's about those things we're talking about, like who pays for what, and you know, where you put that, and does it benefit everybody? Or
Right.
just benefit a few, so. That's all I got.
Director Sonella?
I was going to say the same thing that Director Podol had just said. It was a great presentation, especially, and I know how you don't like this, but for a new board member. I think I got, a couple more months left before I can stop saying that. But I didn't know anything about Proposition 218 before yesterday, so it was just good information for me as it pertains to increasing rates and establishing rates, and I'll echo Director Podol's comments too. Kudos to staff for keeping us out of trouble.
Thank you.
I have a question, I wasn't there, so I'm sorry, but, I'm sorry.
I was just gonna say.
Go right ahead, I didn't see your hand, ever.
I know, I didn't raise it, I hadn't turned yet. I just want to say, agree with all three of us there as well, but I did feel, and this is a thankfulness to our staff, that we weren't juggling that issue of what to do about the lifeline idea. Because obviously there's districts still out there, and it's nice to know not only did we be proactive, but we've got this really great cost of service study that, and we've got our homework, and that seemed to be the key points. The whole thing is you don't know what will happen, so line up your ducks and be ready to show it to them. So I really do appreciate that, and it was Salt. Was it Kelly Salt?
Kelly Salt, yeah, BBK.
What a very precise, concise, efficient speaker. Excellent.
Yeah.
Thank you.
It's all yours.
I wasn't there, so I guess my question would be, after attending the SDLA last year, Special District Leadership Academy, up in Napa, we spent half a day on 218. And I brought back with me two very simplified forms that they have, they showed from different agencies. Compared to ours, it was an easy read, and I turned them over to staff, so hopefully our next 218 will be a lot easier. I understand you get your attorney involved, but no, both these SDLA said these are good, and their attorney said they were good. Our attorney might be different.
Yeah.
No, I think that's, the staff has a lot of latitude as to how they want to present this, and we look at it and see whether or not there's, you know, a legal issue hanging there. But otherwise, I think it's, you want to defer to staff's judgment on it, and not only that, but they you know, borrow from other local agencies that do the same thing. So a lot of hard work, I think, at the staff level goes into these things. But simple's always better.
Well, and for most people, I mean, a lot of hard work goes in by our financial guys, I understand that, but most people out there aren't CPAs we're sending it to. So, if you do it a little more simply, it will make sense to the common folk, like me. I'll go, oh, I understand this, I've never understood one of those, and I count them every couple of years. Like, really? Trash it, you want something somebody reads.
Well, I think one of the problems we have is a lot of our rates, they're not simple. There's a lot of different rates for different types of uses that we have, and you've got to put all that in there, so it looks a lot more complicated that way.
Okay, thank you. And I have one report on, I attended Rotary. It's not a per diem thing, but I'll report on it anyhow. I attended Rotary, and there was maybe 30 people there. And I've got to tell you that Lisa, without knowing it was the hit, she filled me up with all the documentation that I would need, and all the giveaways, which was 3 5-pound bags of, and they were the hugest hit.
Pure green.
The pure green, yeah.
Not bags of.
They gave away wine bottles of the raffle ticket, but I added those, and everybody, they were trading wine to get 5 pounds of
Pure green.
pure green. So it was fun, and I would recommend anyone go out and speak to any group, bring a couple of bags with you, because people really like it. They want to know where they can get it, and I tell them it's not available. You get it through me, $2. Cheap, really cheap.
Do we have bags? Is there extra bags in the back?
We can get them.
Yeah.
We can get them.
There's
More-
30 of them in the back room at Encino.
Much as you want, Mike, we'll
Those
get
are
for
great
you.
raffle items for events like the Rotary or
Oh,
Kiwanis
Chamber
or
of Commerce,
something.
anything.
Yeah.
And they get people talking about it, and it doesn't cost anything to advertise.
You just got to remind them if they ever have it at home, it's not ground coffee, you know, just.
Oh, I say it could be used. Smart.
It's not
I had
green
the-
tea, huh?
I want to tell you, I brought that jar, there's a jar that Lisa has, that has flowers on it. It's great for third graders, didn't work for regular people. But you can open it, and you can taste it and touch it and do whatever you want with it. And everyone was kind of like, this is at lunch, and they're like, yeah, no, thank you. You know, but I said, no, I think a lot of people smell. A couple did, but most of them were like, thank you very much, passed it along. So, it was interesting. All right. Urban Water Institute, which we already talked about tonight, August 13th through 15th. We have 3 people attending, I think, for the full thing. And Mike, you're getting up there for the day to do the SDLA thing?
Which one was this? I zoned out for a second.
Well, that's your Water Institute, that's not the SDL.
Oh, wrong
Yeah.
one.
Wrong one, that's not the one. We'll make sure he gets to the class.
Okay.
I wasn't planning.
Don't worry.
on it.
We want to get Joe to be proud of us.
Don't worry, we'll get Mike to the class.
That's on the 29th, right? My thing?
We'll
Yeah.
verify.
Yeah.
Yeah, September.
Okay, director's comments. Director comment on future agenda items. Anyone want to see anything on the agenda? Got questions about anything? Seeing. No? Okay.
And then we call this meeting adjourned.
Thank you.